Hey y'all, welcome in or welcome back to the channel. Welcome to a new video. Y'all, today's video I think is going to be so fun. A few weeks ago now, I posted a video talking about wedding consumption, the cost of weddings, and how overall weddings can be a financial trap. I ran a survey on this channel asking for your experience, and today we are going to be looking at all the questions and your answers based on that survey. Over 500 of you responded, which is insane. When I created the survey, I thought maybe 100 or 200 people would do it. 500 people is the size of some of the surveys that big publications took in order to get some of their results. I think 1,000 people is a little bit more common, but we do see some studies on 500 or 600 people, and we got like a great little sample data here. Granted, as I mentioned in the video, I think who answered this survey is, I don't know how representative of the average person it is. I'm curious to hear your take once we break down the results. And some of the questions we'll be talking about, or that I'm really excited to dive into, are some of your regrets, like what you regretted spending money on, what you wished you spent more money on. We'll also look a little bit about debt, because some of y'all were forthcoming about your debt information. And then there's also some just great advice and tips in there. If you want to hear what y'all had to say about wedding spending, strap in. It's going to be a fun one. Okay, so the first question is, where do you live? And this, I think, was poor survey design because people manually wrote in where they're from. And you can see all the different countries that people wrote in from. However, we don't get a stat of 56% are from the US or 15% or from the UK. In order to do that, I would have to offer some options, and I chose not to do that because I didn't want to exclude anybody. If I just went with my top locations, then there would be some countries excluded, which I did not want, and also would have been super time consuming to enter in 100 countries. So it works for the perspective of what this survey is. Okay, how old were you when you got married? You can see the 5 options. Actually, I should move over a little bit. So we have this whole area for the screen. The most common age to get married was 25 to 34. My own perception is that people start thinking about marriage around maybe 27. 27 to 32 would probably be what I would say be the most common ages. The second biggest demographic was 18 to 24. We'll just go with a rounder number, 30%. Roughly 2/3 of the respondents got married in 25 to 34 age bracket, and then just shy of 30% in 18 to 24. The 18 to 24 does surprise me a little bit. If you're somebody who has gotten married young, I would love to hear more about it. And I say that because I don't really know anybody who who's gotten married under the age of maybe 26, 27. Maybe 26, I think, is the youngest person that I know that's gotten married. Personally, no. So I just don't have much experience or people in my lives to talk to or to see. Actually, 2 girls that I went to school with got married young. One at around 23. And then I think she had her first kid around 24, maybe 25. And then another girl I went to school with, similar age as the first person. She might have been slightly older, 24 or 25 when she got married. So this isn't me judging, saying shame on you for getting married at 20. I just would like to hear from you genuinely, with genuine curiosity. All right, when did you get married? The most common response, about 100%, just shy of that, 16% of respondents, 2024. Next biggest is 2025, so 76 people, 13.5%. And then we have 2022, 12 and a bit percent, and then 2023. So the majority of people who responded to this survey were in the last 5 years. 8.5, 2021, and then you can see some of the older answers in the colors on the side. All right, I think this is where the juicy questions start. How much did you spend or plan to spend on your wedding? The biggest response, 53.6%, is $10,000 or less. The next biggest group at 21.5% is 10 to 20,000. So just to show you how many people answered, 301, they spent under 10,000. The second biggest group was 121 people, or 21.5%, spent between $10,000 and $20,000. Next biggest, 20 to 30,000, and then 30 to 40. I feel kind of torn about if this is a reflection of an average person or an average wedding, or maybe I shouldn't say average, I should say median. We have a small sample size, but also who watches my channel, and the people who responded to this survey, I think would probably be regular viewers. Like, this is another question for y'all. If you responded to the survey, what percentage of my videos do you watch? Are you regular viewers? I would be super curious to hear if you've only seen like one or two of my videos and then you saw this and you just responded. There's no like shame or hate either way. I feel like I'm more inclined to say that somebody who's a regular viewer might have seen the community post or be more inclined to share their information. So if you are a viewer of this channel, you're a subscriber, you already have an interest in conscious consumption, maybe budgeting, frugal living, spending within your means kind of thing. I think that it could be representative of a median spend on wedding, but also it might be more representative of people who are conscious of how they're spending money or don't want to spend a lot of money. I think that that's totally a potential. But like, when you look at the cost of living, when you look at how much things cost, like homes and rent, and also when you potentially factor in other debt that might be coming into marriage, I get why people generally don't want to spend more money on their weddings in the 2020s. And I think that there is growing interest in not spending money on wedding because cost of living is so expensive and the cost of weddings themselves are so expensive. And if a couple doesn't own a home and they would like to, they might say, hey, I don't want to spend $30,000 on a wedding. I want to spend $5,000 or $10,000 on a wedding, maybe even $15,000 on a wedding, to save the rest of that money for the down payment of my home. I think that's becoming increasingly common. And I also think that previously there was a lot of pressure for the traditional wedding. Like, if you were to get married, that's how things should look. And I don't know that there were tons of models of people doing other things differently. Your own community, your own life, your own culture impacts how common that may or may not be. And I guess I'm sharing maybe my own experience here because I have never been to a wedding that was untraditional. Every wedding was traditional in some kind of capacity. A sit-down dinner, even a buffet of some kind in a hall with a DJ, that kind of thing. I have not personally been to a wedding where it's in an unconventional venue or under 100 people. And I overall am seeing more of that, hearing more of that as my friends get, and myself, we get older, as to why people aren't spending the money, aren't having the traditional wedding like might have been more common 20 to 40 years ago. So just for some examples, I was not expecting 500 people to share the cost of their weddings. I'll give you some examples. 1,000, 3,000, 12,000, 5,000, 25,000, 20,000, 4,000. I'm just going to scroll a little bit. You can hopefully see the numbers on the screen. We have 45,000, 2,000, 30,000, 9, 34,000, 15, 16, 13,000, 25,000, 47,000. Okay, next up. How many guests were or will be at your wedding? I should have put more questions like this. Biggest response, 50 or less, 45.7%, and that's about 257 people. We have two actually in a tie, 51 to 75%, which is 86 people or 15.3%, and then 101 to 150, also with that same amount, But the second biggest was 76 to 100 people, or 95 responses, and 16.9%. I find this interesting. Things have changed a little bit since I last looked in, because this number, the 101 to 150, was not a leading number. Now it's kind of tied for third place. When we look at average cost as being $10,000 or less, being the number one response, I can imagine some of these people might not be in that group, while some of them might be. And I think this could potentially speak to just a lot of maybe like DIY elements or unconventional elements. Like, you could theoretically have 100 people at a wedding at an Airbnb somewhere, and it's not a traditional venue, and you could probably still make it work for under $10,000. So what is this? Question number 4 for this video. If you had over 100 people at your wedding and you spent we'll say under $20,000 on your wedding, how did you do it? The most expensive cost of your wedding. Food and catering is number 1 at 38.4%. Number 2 was venue at 30.8%. And number 3 is attire, which honestly kind of surprised me. The costs that everybody says are most expensive are food, catering, and the venue. With actually, I think what I've heard more of is the venue costing most, but food and catering costing more, I think speaks a little bit more to what I was finding out when I was researching. Like, a lot of these places, they'll have a set cost for their ballroom of, let's say, or their room use, right? Maybe it's $4,000 to $6,000 is kind of one of the common things I was seeing. But if food is $100 a head, let's say that room fits 150 people. People using that room could have 50 people attend, or the maximum 150, and that's going to influence the price. So the food makes a lot of sense. Did you have a budget for your wedding? 72% said yes. Love to see it. And then 27.2% said no. For those of you who said no, this is no judgment, this is curiosity. I would like to know how that works. Yeah, I'm very curious to hear about that. All right, did you spend more than you planned? 49.3% said no. 31.9%, we'll call it 32%, said yes. 9.1% said most likely. These are the people who are currently planning their wedding. And then 9.8% said planning is still in progress and not sure. So even if we combine the yes and most likely at 32 and 9%, that's still 41%, which is less than the no column, which is, I think it's great when people get to stick to their budget, but I also feel like with weddings, a lot of people just don't know, and I did not know how much things cost until I started researching myself, and that kind of seems like the common theme with what I've been hearing from people, is people just did not realize how much things were gonna cost. All right, did you feel pressure to spend more than you planned? 53.9%, we'll call it 54, said yes, and 46.1% said no. That's a little bit closer than I expected. I think I was expecting the yes column to be higher. Just because you feel pressure doesn't necessarily mean that you spend more, but I think that pressure can come in a lot of ways, be it your family or social media or your friends, or like knowing what other people spent or what other people had, maybe feeling a little bit of pressure to have specific things. I honestly wish I asked more about that. So anybody can weigh in whether or not you answered the survey. Did you feel pressure to spend money? Like, I want to hear a yes or no. And like, where did you feel the pressure from? Next up, how did you or will you pay for your wedding? So 20.5% said credit cards. That's 115 people. 82% or 461 said savings. 17 said loans of some kind. 3%. And then family, friends covered costs as a gift. That's 370 people or 65.8%. I think I was expecting higher in the credit card route, but also in the savings route as well as the loans. I asked, if people had friends and family provide gifts, because I know it is common. Sometimes it's like, here's $1,000 or here's $10,000. Others will say we'll cover a third or half. I did know that was common. I didn't know how common though, because 65% I think did surprise me a little bit as to how many families did this and were able to do this. The next question, did you incur debt as a result of your wedding? 87.5% said no, and 12.5% said yes. This stat, as if you've watched the wedding video, is very different from the average, where the average couple, it's about 56% of couples get into debt for their wedding, and we have 12.5%. And that's 70 people. 68 of the 70 chose to provide more information, so we're going to get to that section now. For the how long did it take you to pay off debt, the most common time was 6 to 12 months. We had about 30% of people. For the second most common length of time was 2 or more years, so that's 27.9%. Under 6 months, 22.1%. And then 1 to 2 years was the last quarter. But like when you look at this visual, we have two bigger slices, but they are, I think, a little bit more even than I expected. I was surprised by that. I didn't come in with any kind of expectation of how long I assumed it would take people to pay off debt, but I was not expecting it to be so even. Does that surprise you at all? Did you have any expectations how long you thought it might take people? Okay, we have more information. So 41 people decided to provide more information about this. And all this is anonymous again. This person says, we use credit cards more on honeymoon than wedding. I never asked any question about the honeymoon, and somebody actually wrote in the comments wondering how much more honeymoon expenses, like how much that inflated people's budgets or how much more it would add. I feel like I need a question list, because here's another question. How much more did your honeymoon cost for your total wedding? And when I asked how much did your wedding cost, did you include that in your number? Okay, so they continue. We really tried to be frugal with wedding expenses, but we definitely felt pressure by family and society in general to spend more. Being full-time in nursing school as well as planning a wedding in 7 months left us with $4,200 in debt. We cut up our credit cards after our wedding and had them paid off in about 5 months. Good for you. We had a long engagement, so it just added up so slowly. I didn't realize how much I'd spent until the end. Mostly little things you don't think are a big deal, but it ends up being $50 here and there that end up adding up more in the long run. Probably $300 to $400 for them. This person took out personal loans and used credit cards. It's working to pay off debt with little money to survive. $17,000. Oh, this person says it started us down a hole of credit card use we continue to struggle with. I'm so sorry to hear that. One thing I've heard on socials that somebody else is saying here is we opened credit cards that offered 0% interest for a certain number of months, specifically for wedding costs, and paid them all off in that time frame. I've seen this recommended on TikTok in specific. I'm so glad that it worked for you. But if you see that recommended, I think you should take a hard look as to how you use credit cards, and also if you've budgeted in the past, because I think this strategy can work for some people who can be responsible with it. I think it can be a great tool or resource to help pay for some things, but I absolutely can see it getting out of hand, especially in the wedding context, because weddings cost more than people often realize, and I can see the wedding bills adding up. And then even if you have a budget, starting to put on the credit card and then not realize that your budget's going to be bigger than you expected or spend more than you anticipated, and now you're carrying a balance. Another person says, my mom helped to pay for the wedding. She isn't that great with money though, and near the end I had to put $4,000 on my credit card. It took a while to pay off that $4,000 and my credit card in general, but eventually I did it. If I could go back, I would have had under 20 people and eloped at an A-frame cottage or on a mountain. The food and alcohol for 60-ish guests was the expensive part. Fees not listed by the venue till the billing came, as well as fees incurred by guests behaving poorly were unaccounted for. I did not account for that either. The rowdy guests were surprised and they weren't well mannered before drinking, and we didn't expect their behavior to change so severely. Oh, they were well mannered. It was just a small damage we had to pay for that guests were happy to help cover after we took on debt to handle the situation immediately. We have a bunch of people saying things added up quickly. Please tell me I'm not the only one who was encouraged to book a bigger wedding by the future in-laws, only to never have them cover the extra costs like they promised. It really starts the in-law relationship off poorly when I'm asked them to pay me back for a wedding they wanted us to have. My wedding was my first experience with racking up credit card balance that I couldn't completely pay off in a single statement cycle. It wasn't an impossible balance to eventually pay off, and the credit card I carried it on had a forgiving interest system, but it definitely did stress me out. I appreciate all of you who answered the debt question. Thank you so much. We are in the final thoughts section now, and there are 4 questions here. The first of the 4 is, looking back, is there anything you wish you didn't spend money on or would have spent less money on? I got a bunch of not really's favors, like wedding favors. Somebody wished that they had a smaller venue. Somebody else said, I wish we had spent less on flowers and invited less people, wedding dress, and photographer. I saw quite a few for photographer. I wish I hadn't been talked into more elaborate food selections than I originally wanted. Okay, here's one I want to read out to you, which I think is just a great reminder. So I'm divorced, so obviously all of it, lol. I did learn that the wedding truly does not matter. I had exactly what I wanted and it was very small and it still fell apart. Somebody else says, still planning, but I wish I looked around at different venues, caterers before deciding on my venue. They continue, I have to use the restaurant the bed and breakfast is connected to, and I've heard wonderful reviews, but even with the cheapest option after tax and service fee, we're looking at $8,000 plus to feed our guests. My fiance wanted an open bar, one of his 2 only requests, and that's adding upwards of $3,000. I told myself I wouldn't spend money on invites, then got too excited and bought special custom artwork invites. They were so beautiful, but it was completely needless spending. My dress, it was about $1,000 and I still think it's gorgeous, but not worth that much. I have a hard time with the wedding dresses, and I just kind of feel like, personally, if it came to me, the dress and the food, I see myself being suckered into spending more on those. I'm like such a food person. I love food. My partner loves food too. Not just because I see it happening doesn't mean that it will happen. I get sucked into food advertisements. Last spring, my partner and I watched a ton of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and that's like one of the only times we really watched like TV. And so we got ads, a ton of pizza ads, and we ended up buying pizza from Domino's because of those ads, and it was shit. And then we also tried to buy, Caesar's has like a Detroit style pizza. We tried to buy it from there too, but it closed. It was too late anyway. All I'm trying to say is I get sucked into food advertising. I'm great in other areas, but not with food advertising. Anyway, with the dress, I also see that happening to myself, where it's beautiful and like you loved wearing it, but is this dress that you wore for 6 hours of your day worth $1,000 or more in some cases? No, like, I'm not blaming this person at all. I'm just saying that like I can see that happening to me. I like buying something you wouldn't go, oh, that's worth $200 an hour or whatever it is. Somebody else says my wedding dress. I looked around for something cheaper and secondhand, but I went with the traditional wedding dress from a local boutique. I did love my dress and the pictures, but I sometimes feel weird about having spent $2,000 on a dress I wore once and now don't know what to do with. It isn't a major regret, but I think I would have been happy with a secondhand dress that was cheaper too. I think if I do ever get married, it would be a secondhand wedding dress. I think that's the way to go. I think, for me anyway. Videographer. My parents insisted on booking one and paid for one, but looking back, we never watched our wedding video and looked at our wedding photos instead. I think I would also skip out on a videographer. I think I would just do photos. Oh, somebody says photos. Not married yet. Wish we already opted for a smaller guest list. Less on the mini items like tiny decor and bridesmaid things and extras for getting ready. Photographer and flowers. Even did flowers ourselves, but should have gone to Trader Joe's, to be honest. Another for dress. I wish my dress was cheaper. Alterations ended up costing as much as the dress itself. Okay, we're going to move on to things you wish you did spend money on or wish you spent more money on. Photographer. A bunch of nopes. I wish we had an actual photographer instead of having friends to take photos. I wish we had spent money on a DJ instead of a friend playing DJ. Photography. Better DJ, flowers, and a music band. Photographer, videographer, more photography. Wow. Okay. So I think one of the top categories for people wishing they spent less was dress. And now I'm seeing a lot of photography and videography, people wishing they spent more. Photographer, videographer. Okay, here we go, people. The thing that people wish they spent more money on? Photography and videography. Okay, what surprised you the most about the cost of your wedding? The fact that we did so much DIY in budget-friendly options and still spent $10,000. They nickel and dime for everything. Want the wedding indoors? That's an extra $2,000. Want to have an outside vendor? That is a fee of $1,000. Oh, and don't forget the cleanup fee of $1,000. If you want extra time to get ready at the venue, $450 per hour. I feel like these venues are really dishonest. I even go as far as telling my partner and I that this wedding is an investment. An investment in what, ma'am? Debt? You tell them. Somebody else. Each and everything has its own upcharge. The amount of money you put into your wedding isn't even for you. We just focus more on honeymoon that provided our guests with a wonderful experience. There are so many little costs that turn up into big costs once you add everything up. The cost of rental companies surprised me as well, as that is our biggest expense, and we basically have our venue for free since we are having it at our own private property outdoors. How much all the add-ons would have been. Food catering costs, it's like two times just eating out in a restaurant. How the cost of the venue doubled after we realized we needed event insurance. Damn, the honeymoon, the venue and food cost so much. Photography, wedding dresses. We spent so much money on photography. We love the outcome, but oh my God. Everything costs more than I budgeted for. There are so many websites that say budget 20% for your photographer, 30% for your venue. Almost all the vendors have the same starting price point. So the couples with a smaller budget have to completely forget specific vendors if they can't afford them. How it all adds up. Venues are so expensive. The DJ, venue costs, decoration. Ooh. Y'all. Generally how expensive it all is. How much are religion tied into getting things for cheaper? Getting married at the church, we only had to pay the people working and not for the building. Interesting. Flowers are expensive. Takeaway from this one, everything is more expensive than it seems. Any final thoughts, experience, advice you'd like to share? This is the last question. Keep the fact that you're planning for shopping for a wedding on the down low as much as possible. Though we didn't go into debt, we spent a lot of money that could have been put into savings or other expenses. I wish I set expectations with my family about what I would have wanted for a wedding long before I got engaged. The wedding is starting to feel like it's for everyone else rather than for us. I really encourage everyone to do what feels right for you and not let anyone pressure you to having the wedding they think you should have. I just want to go here for a second. One of my personal pet peeves is when I see weddings being catered for, like to be about the guest instead of the bride and groom. And I've seen this many a time. And I'm not saying don't give a shit about your guests. Some of this comes into play when family specifically says you should have this, or like this person should be invited. And I know everybody's family dynamic is just a little bit different, but it kind of just bugs me on a personal note. When people try to say to me, oh, you need to invite these 12 people because you were invited to their whatever event when you were 9. I'm now going to pay an extra like $900, $1,200 if we're doing a traditional, like let's say $100 a head meal. I'm now going to spend $1,200 to invite people I don't really know. Really? No. To invite people I don't know and I don't really care about, and you also don't care about, but there's just like some, like the family thing, like there's the family gossip. Oh, Sharon's children invited you to her wedding and you're not inviting Sharon's children to yours. Sharon and her kids, I don't know any Sharons, but I think sometimes not sometimes, I am a people pleaser, but there are things I have low tolerance for, and that's one of them. Okay, getting off the high horse now. Start early and use Facebook Marketplace if you have the time to wait for things to pop up. Our wedding was only for 30 people, and we held it at a park pavilion. That and the fact that we made our own food are huge reasons why it was so cheap. My dress was $300 after alterations because it was from a department store and was probably a prom dress. Figure out what is important to you as a couple and start from there. For us, we wanted to be able to pay for everything ourselves without taking on extra debt. We wanted a crazy delicious meal, knowing that wedding food can tend to be a bit generic. That's how we landed on our $15K budget and deciding to use a private room at one of our favorite restaurants. You do not need to subscribe to everything in the industrial wedding machine. It exists to make money off of couples, not make your day special. You make your day special. Amen. Thank you. My spouse and I felt a lot of pressure to do what others wanted. I ended up having some regrets because I caved on a lot to make my family happy. If you don't like big loud parties, don't do a big wedding. Only invite people that you are actually close to and you won't have to spend money on unimportant things. I want to just highlight this one because I'm not a big party person. I don't want like 100 people staring at me. That's not my idea of fun. My partner and I were not drinkers or anything like that. So the big loud party doesn't appeal to me, but it might appeal to you. And the 30 people wedding that people are talking about in the park pavilion, that might not appeal to you, which is totally cool. And do the thing that makes you happy. Like if you're all the family pressure, people saying, oh, spend more money, spend more money. I've also heard from people saying, like telling specifically brides, oh, weddings are a waste of money. Don't spend money on it. But they want to have the 100% wedding. If that is important to you, stick to your guns. Have the wedding that's important to you. It's only one day of your life and you have a lifetime to make memories. Don't go into debt over one day that no one will remember the details about anyway. I think that kind of goes into who is the wedding for. Is it for you or is it for your guests? Right? Like I'm a bit of a proponent of people are generally not going to care about if you have flip-flops on the dance floor or props on the dance floor. That's about making the guest experience a certain way. But I do think that there is like a limit to that there are certain things that the couple cares about that might be important to them that they'll remember 30 years from now. And that's important for them to remember. Okay, here's, I think, the last one we'll end on today. Only invite people you really want there. If you wouldn't take them to a fancy restaurant and pay for their meal, why pay $80 plus for them at your wedding? Plus, it's a celebration of your love. Don't invite downers. There we go. That was the wedding survey. Thank you so much to everybody who answered the survey. And if you didn't get a chance, it is closed now. I would like to hear your best tips and advice to anybody who is about to get married in the process of planning their wedding. Let us know in the comments, along with all the 50 million other questions I asked. Thanks so much for watching and hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed this one. And let me know as well, like, should I do other surveys? We could do other surveys on this channel. It doesn't have to just be wedding related. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again around here soon. Bye.